than those that didn't drink hazardously. So there's a direct correlation between that. So I think there's lots of gains we can make in that area. Random breath testing, penalties, enforcement around that, we do a pretty good job. Obviously, the other countries that have lower breath alcohol limits than we do, but generally the general approach is consistent with other countries.
All right.
Advertising and promotion, when we can advertise our sports team, we've made some inroads there. I think where there are some considerable gains to be done is the social marketing advertising that is done by the liquor industry to our young drinkers, and some of that is difficult to regulate, but I think it's an area that does need to be regulated. They're very clever in how they do market to those young people, so I think there's some gains to be made there.
All right, clear as crystal, thank you. Professor Bridget Cool, with those recommendations, which I just want to ask you about briefly. Let's say this area of social marketing is a bit difficult to tackle holus bolus, or so it has proved. What about what Bridget's saying about take it out of supermarkets would be one option that other jurisdictions have employed, and make outlets less dense? Would you both favour both of those two measures?
I wouldn't be too keen on because that's sort of when we pick up the odd six-pack and stuff is doing the supermarket shopping. The thing is, you want to stop the wrong people from drinking and over-consuming. You don't want to punish everyone that just wants to pick up a bottle of wine or a six-pack of Monteiths when they do their grocery shopping. Definitely the density issue in some of these, like I understand in Auckland it's quite ridiculous. Obviously Fielding, we've only got a couple. That might work.
Yeah,
But
okay.
once again, you're making social judgments, aren't you?
Yeah.
Where do you take these outlets away from? How do you stop someone opening a legitimate business in one area and allowing them to do it in another area? If you're letting supermarkets carry alcohol, you can't really stop outlets opening elsewhere.
Seems to be we're sort of taking away, moving away from the personal responsibility and, these people can't control themselves, so let's do something for them. Actually, we need to put it back on, and, if you play up in a A&E, there needs to be some serious ramifications for you. Let's sting the people that are misbehaving, let's make sure they're punished reasonably harshly.
Well, if you drink, drive and have an accident, you're not covered by your insurance.
Yeah.
Maybe you have an alcohol-related hospital admission, you're not covered by the public health system.
Yeah, you pay the full bill.
That is an interesting suggestion. And it's at odds with the system we've employed for the last half a century, isn't it? So you would add a surcharge to someone in A&E who turned up with an accident and had they been drinking and it was their fault.
I'm just throwing that out there.
No, it's not people throw it in here when we have these discussions. Why not make them pay?
Well, the difficulty in that, of course, is whose fault is it if you're the one who's bashed by someone who's boozed?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't make them
You don't
pay.
want to punish them. Yeah, but then someone's got to make those judgments.
That would add insult to injury.
It'd be quite difficult.
Literally.
Yeah. Yes.
Very good. The music's overtaken us. So that's all we have time for on the panel today. Andrew Haggard, good luck with the next month.
No worries, thanks a lot.
We won't ask you back until September.
Yeah, that'll be good.
And Alexia Russell, thank you, Alexia. Always nice to see you.
You too.
And we return tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, on the panel. And Checkpoint is coming up forthwith.
Tōti mara e hoa mai he kōrero, kei te haere hei kaupapa, kei te karawhiua. Tonight on Checkpoint, a new offer on the table for nurses. DHB spokesperson Jim Green joins us live after Katrina's news. Also tonight, access to Hunter Valley Station. How do you get it? Who has been turned away? And what are the larger issues of private land, public access and a growing tourist demand for going off the beaten track, even if that's on private land? Don't bogart that moral high ground. Are the Nats playing politics with medicinal cannabis? At least 74 people are dead after raging wildfires ripped through a small resort town in Greece. And hundreds of people are missing, and 6,000 people are homeless after a broken dam in Laos. All of that and more coming up after the news.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, good evening. Ko Katrina Batanaho. District health boards have made a new pay offer to nurses and their union says they should accept it. Details of the latest revised offer were released a short time ago. Here's our health correspondent Karen Brown.
The new offer contains $38 million that DHBs will use to start recruiting extra staff immediately while working with the union locally on the areas where staff are needed most urgently. The boards have also agreed to a process for providing reports to union members on staffing. As well, they've brought forward a new top-level 7 salary step for senior nurses. The DHBs say the offer goes further than either the Employment Relations Authority facilitator or an independent panel suggested and ensures an agreement will retrospectively apply from last month instead of 2 weeks after ratification. Nurses say it retains previously achieved benefits, including on pay equity. Ko Karen Brown, tēnei.
It's understood the nurses' organisation will ballot its members on the offer from next week. 2 senior army staff have been stood down at Waioru camp as an inquiry into sexual misconduct is launched. The Defence Force says allegations of inappropriate behaviour by 7 staff involved in training recruits are being investigated by the military police. Anne-Marie May reports.
The Defence Minister Ron Mark only learnt about the inquiry through the media today and says he's disappointed not to have been told in advance. He says the standards that apply to those responsible for training young people in the military cannot be allowed to be degraded or undercut. National's Defence spokesperson Mark Mitchell says he does not believe there's a cultural problem in the military. However, Hayley Young, who has been fighting a court action over sexual harassment in the Navy, says she's not surprised by the latest developments. This is Anne-Marie May.
The Parliamentary Committee considering the government's medicinal cannabis legislation has been unable to reach agreement on the future shape of the bill. It's been hearing public submissions on the legislation, which gives terminally ill people access to medicinal cannabis. But it split down the middle between National and Labour MPs and got deadlocked when trying to decide on changes recommended by the Health Ministry. Despite that, the government still has the numbers to progress the bill once it returns to Parliament. National has withdrawn its support and is pushing a members' bill that allows for medicinal cannabis products to be given the same status as any other pharmacist-only medicine. The Chief Ombudsman, Peter Bosher, says the Auckland Council broke every rule in the book with its sloppy mishandling of an RNZ request for official information. RNZ complained about the 5 months it took to get a council report on the future of the imported vehicle trade at Ports of Auckland. The broadcaster said internal emails between officials also raised questions about whether the council intentionally delayed the report's release. Judge Bosher says that's unacceptable.
You can't not release because it's not convenient. And if you decide that you don't want to release, you've got to give reasons. Auckland City did none of those things. It just acted quite unilaterally.
The Chief Ombudsman, Peter Bosher. 2 alt-right speakers still intend to come to New Zealand despite the withdrawal of a legal challenge. A group called the Free Speech Coalition initiated the court action after Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux were prevented from speaking at Auckland's Bruce Mason Centre. The coalition says its main purpose in this regard has gone because the council has conceded that the Mayor, Phil Goff, did not make the decision and that it was in fact made by Regional Facilities Auckland. However, event organiser David Pello says he's continuing to consult with private venues about hosting Ms Southern and Mr Molyneux.
They'll be heading there for at least a holiday after the Australian tour, if not more work.
David Pello. The coalition is going ahead with other legal action related to the case. It's 4 minutes past 5. Sport. New Zealand sailor Blair Tuke says he and Peter Burling are still hungry for success in the smaller 49er boats. The duo have announced they'll attempt to defend their 49er title at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. They've also confirmed they'll be part of Team New Zealand's defence of the America's Cup the following year. The pair were unbeaten in the 49er class from 2012 to the Rio Olympics, but haven't competed in the boats since. Tuke says he misses racing the smaller skiffs.
It's one of those things we want to have a bit of fresh air after the Volvo and, really lay down the plans for the next couple of years. So it's exciting now that we've got it out there and we can just really focus on putting plans in place to try and win a gold medal in Tokyo and also to defend the Cup here in NZ.
Blair Tuke. Central Stags left-arm spinner Ajaz Patel is in line to make his Black Caps debut after being named in the Test squad to play Pakistan in the United Arab Emirates. The 29-year-old, named last season's Domestic Player of the Year after helping the Stags to the Plunket Shield title, has been called in to replace Mitchell Satner, who's still recovering from knee surgery. Patel has been the Shield's top wicket taker over the past 3 seasons, snaring 48 at 21 apiece in his most recent campaign. He'll join Todd Astle and Ish Sodhi as the frontline spinners in the 15-strong squad. The selectors also opted to include a second wicket-keeper in Tom Blundell alongside BJ Watling. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, a window on the world of privatised cities in Honduras. Oasis of Western-style order in the lawless Central American wilderness. At least that's the marketing spin. I wonder who's providing the cheap labour. And we have a sofa session, a horn section with a classic twist, Brass Quad, who pop into the studio ahead of their North Island tour.
In regard to banks, all you're asking for is that you're treated on the basis of your income and your ability to pay back something if you've got a loan, or if you want to start a business, that the business is going to be viable.
Yes, I think, the perception that they're dealing with criminals is ancient, and it's not appropriate for what we're talking about. Sex workers are a part of society.
That's Lately with Karen Hay, 10 p.m. weeknights on RNZ National.
Met service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland to Whanganui, also Coromandel Peninsula and the Central High Country, cloudy periods and a few showers, retreating to the coast later tomorrow. Bay of Plenty, Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, often fine, but a few showers overnight and tomorrow afternoon. Manawatu to Wellington, also Wairarapa, Marlborough and Nelson. A few showers from Kapiti to Manawatu, spreading elsewhere tonight, then clearing everywhere by midday tomorrow and becoming fine. Bulla to Fiordland, showers, some heavy with possible thunderstorms in Fiordland overnight and again tomorrow evening. Canterbury, fine apart from high cloud tonight. Otago, fine apart from scattered light rain tomorrow morning. Southland, scattered rain from tonight until tomorrow morning, then showers mainly about the coast and Stewart Island. And the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods, a few showers from tonight. It's 5:05 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thanks, Katrina, and thanks everyone for being with us. Let's begin tonight with nurses. This breaking news. District Health Boards have late this afternoon released details of their revised offer to nurses. This comes after thousands of nurses walked off the job for the first time in 30 years earlier this month. The new offer includes fast-tracking one of the salary steps for registered nurses and midwives and the $38 million commitment to increasing staffing levels immediately. Joining us now is DHB spokesperson Jim Green. Jim, are you there?
Yes, I am, John.
Nice to talk to you. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. I'm just trying to work out what's different here. I'm looking at the statement put out by the DHBs. We were pushed hard by the union to put together a package that met their members' demands for action on safe staffing. How have you done that?
Well, we've improved the offer in 2 ways, John. One is around that safe staffing area. One of the things that NZNO was really clear about for their members was wanting to make sure that those new staff are going to get there into the wards and make a difference. And they wanted to have really regular and concise and clear reporting to their members in the hospitals that what was happening, where are the vacancies, how are they being filled, that sort of information. They wanted that really up front. And so we've added that in, some really strong words around that so that people will know where they're at.
Right, strong words. Sorry, forgive me for interrupting. Strong words. Will there be more nurses, more money for new nurses?
Well, this is the commitment that the government's already made, and that was money that was in the last offer. But it was this part of it was really wanting to make sure that we've got the mechanisms there so that everybody's clear about what's happening and that those people are getting to the front line where they're needed.
Okay, I can see why they. But were you in negotiations, Jim? I can see why they put you in there. Is there is there new money? Is there more money?
Well, there is the change in the step, the RN7. So that was the other part that's really changed here was that the nurses wanted to make sure that that new top step was included within the term of the agreement. So that has been brought forward to go in there.
Okay, but in terms of the overall cost of this package, has there been an increase in the fiscal value of this package compared to the last proposal that went to nurses and was rejected? Is more money being spent? I know it's being spent earlier and slightly differently, but has there been an increase in the money spent?
Well, that's you've summed it up very well there around the earlier, bringing it in earlier, and it's been, the government's made it really clear that there is no more money from them in terms of supporting this, and so we're going to be talking with the Ministry of Health about how we can work this through. But to us, it was really important to move forward on that. We're keen to get moving, and so are NZNO and its members. And so we wanted to get resolution so we can move forward quickly.
And the minister calls us encouraging. Were you stuck between a rock and a hard place here? So what you've said is there is no new money. There's no extra money. Sorry, there was new money, but there is no extra money since the last offer. So you have the minister saying, nah, you've hit the ceiling. There is a cap on this deal and you have reached it. You have the nurses saying, we want more and we want it meaningfully spent on increasing nurse numbers. Were you stuck between a rock and a hard place? How have you achieved a new offer which will be meaningful to nurses?
Well, I think that's because we've listened to the NZNO's bargaining team around the really key things. They've spent time since the last offer was rejected, going back to their members and really hearing again what are the important things. And that team has done a really good job in working with us and understanding what the main points are for their members. Okay. And, the nurses are really interested in two things, we think, and that's what's come out in the settlement. They're interested in better staffing and really making a difference for patients. That's what people get into nursing for. And so this has been a very strong part of the whole campaign that the nurses have made around this. So we've responded to that, and we've not only responded to that, and the government has as well by putting more money into the pot for that, but we've also responded to it and actually making sure that this actually now translates into those changes that the nurses want for the patients and for themselves. So that was one of the really important things. And the other one was around, that salary step to get that within the term.
Jim, we've received a lot of feedback immediately on Facebook, and I guess people need to study the offer, and it's being put to them by the NZ Nurses Organisation, as you say. But we've instantly heard from some nurses. Now, producer Michelle Cook spoke to a nurse just a few minutes ago. She said she was pleased to see a date for pay equity, but felt the shortage of nurses hadn't sufficiently been addressed. This is what she said.
This new offer is pretty much just a reshuffle of previous offers. They seem to be taking stuff away and then bringing stuff back to try and make it look different. Safe staffing is a really big issue that needs to be addressed now, and it can't wait until a later date, and 500 nurses is not going to cut the mustard. And I think that fair pay needs to be looked at now also.
So 500 doesn't change, but you are saying that people will see new nurses sooner.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you say to that nurse? Please respond.
Well, I can respond very well to her and say, this is at the heart of what's actually been agreed with her bargaining team over the last couple of days, to really beef up our response as quickly as possible to these issues, to get those nurses out there. And to have a salary structure that is promotes nursing as a career for people, so retains people within it. So I think that we've done a lot, and herself and her colleagues have really pushed and made sure that their voices are heard, and we've responded to that. So I hope now that nurses will be able to see the progress, get all of the details from their union, and support us now and moving forward.
Jim Green, we really appreciate you fronting at very short notice. Thank you. Jim Green, who is the DHB spokesperson. Let's go to the union. The Nurses Organisation Associate Industrial Services Manager is Glenda Alexander. And Glenda, you are on the phone also at very short notice, and we are grateful. Have the chairs simply been shuffled here? I mean, things have been moved forward clearly, but in terms of the substantive issues that nurses were raising, and I spoke to a great many nurses on that march up Queen Street, and they said, we need more nurses. We need greater patient safety. We need more and more people on the wards, and we're going to have to spend more money to do that. Now, no more money is being spent. It's just that we're going to see the new nurses sooner. Is this enough?
Well, I think hi, anyway, nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you, Glenda, thank you.
Yeah, that's cool. So, no, I think that you're very correct in what we all heard, on the picket lines, why there were picket lines were that for a long time the issue around, having a safe environment for our patients and a healthy workplace for our nurses is a key issue, and we've been chipping away at this for years, it feels like, and that's been why the frustrations came out in terms of the action that nurses took over this matter, a couple of weeks ago now. So what we believe is the real improvements in this latest offer is the issues around having clearer monitoring and reporting mechanisms, also ensuring that there will be real enforceable mechanisms now to make sure that we can get those nurses in to the hospitals where they need to be, and to make sure that everyone has a much better environment in order for them to, do what they do best, which is to ensure that patients get quality care. So I think there's real positives in this. I think it is about saying now we've got some, teeth to it, and that there is, real, opportunities for us to see improvements in that arena.
David Clark said it's encouraging. He calls it encouraging. He would say that because he's put a fiscal cap on this offer, right? So he's got to say this is good. You are recommending it to your members, aren't you?
We are, on the basis of that, this is the fifth offer now, and we have retained all the previous benefits. So, as we've gone along, there's been, things put in and improvements made, and we've kept all that together on the table. We've also now got the new step inside the term of the agreement, which was another concern that members had with the last offer. So that's been improved. But more significantly, I think, is the issue that has been, the frustration and the feelings of stress and so on, with people just feeling like they can't do their best when they're at work because of the staffing. And so this is our real opportunity to get stuck in now and do that.
Glenda Alexander, thank you so much for joining us live. We really appreciate it. Glenda Alexander and Jim Green are basically just taking calls and going straight on the radio, and we are grateful for it. Nurses, we'd love your feedback. Do text us 2101, 17 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ. We turn now to the Hunter Valley Station on the banks of Lake Hawea, of course, and the Department of Conservation has told us they've received no complaints about access in the 18 months since Matt Lauer bought the lease. So how do you get access, and who controls it? And is the access the Overseas Investment Office made a condition of the sale being granted? This would seem to us to be a matter for the OIO to answer, but they wouldn't appear on Checkpoint tonight, although they emailed a statement in which they said it's important to note that the new owner has agreed to a greater level of public access to Hunter Valley Station than previously existed. Agreement, yes. And neither DOC nor the groups lobbying for greater access have been able to put us in touch with anyone who's been turned away, but is not being turned away the same as getting in. How easy is that? And what are the bigger issues here regarding the control of access to land like this? We start the examination of these issues with a phone call.
Please wait. Transferring.
Kia ora. Welcome to the Department of Conservation, Wanaka. Opening hours are 8:30 a.m. till 5 p.m. on weekdays and 9:30 a.m. till 4 p.m. on Saturdays. If you wish to listen to the weather, please stay on the line. If you require further assistance, please press 0 at any time.
In a moment, we will press 0 because the assistance we require is access to the Hunter Valley Station. But before we do that, let's go back to its leaseholder, Matt Lauer, talking on this program for the first time last night.
And the thing that's the most frustrating about it is I don't know what problem we're trying to solve, because we have never denied people access who have gone through the correct procedure and called the station and said they were prepared to be on that road and properly equipped. We kept a log of all the people who called, and I think out of more than 100 people who requested access, only 3 or maybe 4 were denied, and that was because of farming operations.
Matt Lauer, to pray see, particularly the part where the audio dropped out, he claimed access has never been denied to people who've made the appropriate applications to go onto the land. And as for those who did fall foul of that process, the number was, and let's repeat Matt Lauer saying it,
only 3 or maybe 4 were denied, and that was because of farming operations. So I'm not sure what the problem is that these people are trying to solve.
Right, given that, let's go back to DOC in Wanaka, press 0 and ask them, Hey, do you have a number for Hunter Valley Station so I can book access for it?
Unfortunately, you can't just book access for it. You do have to ask for permission if you got to go through their land, but I'm not allowed to give out their number.
So the dock office in Wanaka, essentially the custodian of the public land people want to reach by passing through the Hunter Valley Station, are not allowed to give out the station's number.
As I said, I'm not allowed to give out the number to anyone.
Now, since Matt Lauer went on Checkpoint last night, RNZ has received feedback from listeners saying Doc has told them the same thing. One of them is James Thornton, who was doing editing work on a guidebook that covers the ranges between the Haast and Aoraki Mount Cook. It's called Barron Saddle to Mount Brewster, and it's highly regarded for being reliable, informative and up-to-date. James Thornton was working on the Hunter Valley section and wanted to confirm their phone number for people wanting access to the land.
I rang them up to make sure it's still the same. Well, I spoke to Doc in Wanaka to see, can I put in a new one, is it still the same number? And they pretty much said the farmer does not want it to be made public. End of story.
And did they know you were phoning on behalf of a guidebook?
They did know, yes, yep. So I wanted to know, to put it in the guidebook.
James Thornton emailed Doc, and Checkpoint has a copy of Doc's reply. It explicitly says the people managing the Hunter Valley Station, quote, wish for their numbers not to be given out to the public. Let's go back to Matt Lauer on Checkpoint last night.
We have logs, John. We keep a log of every call. The procedure is you call the station. You say, I'd like to come back there. I'd like to go hiking up that road or whatever. And we say, are you properly equipped? Do you know the conditions of the road? You know, in the winter, that road is a very difficult road. It frosts over. It's very steep on one side down to the lake or the river, depending on where you are. It's very steep on the other side because it goes up into the mountains. And we ask them if they're prepared. If they're adequately prepared and we know who's going back there so that we can keep track of them, and we don't get a situation where 2 days later someone's calling looking for their loved one and we have to go back there and look. But as long as they tell us where they're going to be, how long they intend to be back there, and that they're properly equipped, we have let everyone go back there.
And yet
Everyone.
there is a sense from the Federated Mountain Clubs, from the Walking Access Commission, that in fact there is no easement, there is no access.
Okay, can I ask you then, ask them to give you the names of the people who've been refused access.
In the 24 hours since we did that interview, we've heard anecdotally of those people, we've heard of them secondhand, but we haven't been able to speak to one of them directly. It seems to not be that there are refusals as such. The issue appears to be getting permission. What makes this bizarre, Doc, withholding the number, the reported instructions to Doc to not give the number out, is that you can find it easily on the internet. And when you call the Hunter Valley Station for permission to enter, this is what you get.
Hello, Taff and Penny aren't available to take your call at the moment. If you leave us a message, we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you.
Taff and Penny Cochrane, who sold the lease to Matt Lauer. And it seems issues around access to the land date back to their time in control. Indeed, the Upper Clutha Tracts Trust, in a newsletter in March of last year expressing disappointment at the terms under which Matt Lauer obtained the lease, said, and this is a verbatim quote,
"Former lessees of the station, Taff and Penny Cochrane, have denied access often, particularly since they put the station up for sale in 2010.
In other words, access issues date back at least 8 years. So, Matt Lauer insists no one is being refused, but he's not there. And he told us last night he hasn't been there for 9 months. And the people who answer the phone when you call to ask for permission have reportedly, historically, quote, denied access often. Given this, should the Overseas Investment Office have been much more explicit about access, terms, numbers, protocols, measurements, rigour, in other words, a robust and transparent system? We wanted to ask the OAO this, but no one there would talk to us. No one at Hunter Valley Station would call us back either. But next door is a very different operation entirely.
Dad and Granddad always had a pretty good relationship with the original sort of mountain
climbers and trampers, and then it's just grown since then.
Yes, for generations, the Aspinall family have let people access their land. Mount Aspiring Station, many listeners will know it, a working cattle and sheep farm that somehow achieves the precarious balance between private land and public access. And are there many days in the year when there isn't a member of the public somewhere on your farm walking or cycling to get to some magic spot or other?
No, I don't think there'd be any days.
Yes, every day of the year, every year, the Aspinall family share parts of their farm with strangers. And so during lambing, for example, how do you deal with traffic coming through?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, we're reasonably fortunate in that we've got a good relationship with docks, so most of the access routes are pretty well marked, and we just have to... we run on the theory there's plenty of people going through, so the stock tend to drift away from those tracks, and they do stay away. I'm sure that there is probably, it's not a nice thing, but there are probably some lambs that are mismothered because of the access, but I guess it's the reality of people wanting to walk through farmland.
Walk through is a key phrase. A public road takes people to parking spots and then they can walk or cycle from there. No permission is required, no logbooks. The Aspinall family regard the farm as theirs but seem to see the land as almost sacred. But...
well, obviously the last few years it's becoming a lot trickier, or just with the sheer number of people we're seeing visiting New Zealand in general and visiting spots such as we're at, it's certainly getting more difficult to manage.
And whilst Randall Aspinall strongly believes in and will uphold access, as his family before him have done, he thinks this is a conversation we collectively need to have. As more and more tourists go in search of remoteness, places without a drive-through McDonald's, it's not always as simple as letting all comers in. Hunter Valley Station, for example.
We're talking tracks that go around reasonably high up on steep hill faces, and river crossings they're not creeks, they're rivers, especially when in flood. So without wanting to comment on the rights or wrongs, like the first thing that needs to be taken into account is that it is actually a very hostile environment in the wrong conditions. And so your first point is absolutely that needs to be I guess considered or got right in the first instance.
Who says? And if tour buses start arriving, and if tourism is driving the economy and more tourists want access to remote land over private land, who controls that? And how? These are issues way bigger than Matt Lauer's property. Randall Aspinall, who's a local Federated Farmers chair but stresses he's not speaking on their behalf, says this is a conversation we all need to have.
And I do think to some extent we also need to be able to recognise when enough is enough. Like there's a certain amount of access that I believe is sought, and I'm not talking about any specifics here, but it is sought simply because you can't go there rather than needing or having a real need to go. And yeah, I guess that's just where I think we maybe as a country need to have a bit more of a think about where we're heading with tourism and access and visits, and try and refine things down and then have the resources to actually implement and manage the access in a good way, and compensate people that are going to be affected by it.
Randall Aspinall from Mount Aspiring Station. We would love your feedback on this balancing act. Do text us 2101. How do we get this right, given how many tourists now want to go way off the beaten track? 5:29, news or headlines next. But before that, the Defence Minister is expressing disappointment at a fresh bout of reports of sexual misconduct involving senior staff and recruits to the top brass of the Defence Force. 7 members from the Defence facility where Army recruits are trained in Waioru are under investigation for inappropriate behaviour. Anne-Marie May reports.
2 senior leaders from the Army depot have been replaced and others have been removed from instructing recruits while the investigations by the military police and the command take place. The Defence Minister Ron Mark says the allegations are of a sexual nature. He says Defence staff need to comply with the law.
Right now it is illegal and it is against the standing orders for relationships to be formed between instructors and recruits. That's the bottom line. There are standards expected of those who are entrusted and given charge of the responsibility of training our young men and women and preparing them for war. Those standards will not be allowed to be degraded or in any way undercut.
The two senior leaders who have been replaced are not under investigation, but Ron Mark says it comes down to the chain of command.
This has all the signs of a failure of command responsibility, and that has already been acted on by the Chief of Army. People have been removed from their posts, and new command teams have been put in.
Mr Mark says he has told the senior leaders of the Defence Force the government expects action.
I've met with the Chief of Defence Force and the Chief of Army. I've made it very clear as to how disappointed we are in this government, and we expect strong action.
Ron Mark says the Chief of Army, Major General Peter Kelly, had initiated inquiries a number of weeks ago and had already received reports from the inquiry he had made. He says he didn't find out about the investigation until it broke in the media and would have preferred to have been told about the inquiry when it started. One person not surprised by today's announcement is Hayley Young, who has been fighting an ongoing court action against the Defence Force over sexual harassment and rape she experienced while in the Navy. She says new sailors were warned in their initial training about the culture in the armed forces.
The guys are going to hit on you. There's going to be rude comments. It's part of working in such a male-dominated culture. And then we were sort of given some tips on how to protect ourselves. And I found that actually quite unhelpful because it meant I took all of the responsibility for my health and safety on board.
National's Defence spokesperson Mark Mitchell says he has only just heard of the allegations, but he does not believe they speak to a cultural problem in the military.
No, absolutely not. I've been very proud of the steps the Defence Force have taken to make sure that there's a safe workplace for everyone. So I'd need to see the details around it.
Ron Mark says he expects the Chief of the Army and the Defence Force to complete the investigation and to take whatever action is necessary. For Checkpoint, Anne-Marie May.
You're with Checkpoint on RNZ. Thank you for being with us. Coming up, at least 74 people are dead after wildfires ripped through a small Greek resort town. Hundreds of people are missing and 6,000 are homeless after a broken dam wall sent floodwaters surging through at least 8 villages in Laos. The National Party puts up its own medicinal cannabis bill. The Olympics and the America's Cup all within 12 months. New Zealand sailors Peter Burling and Blair Tuke reckon they can do both. We'd love your feedback on nurses. Text us 2101 or on public access to private land. Lots of feedback already coming in. Business next with Madison, but before it all, Katrina Batten with the headlines.
The Nurses Union is recommending its members accept today's revised offer from district health boards. There's no new money, but the offer includes measures for recruiting extra staff immediately and brings forward the introduction of a new top salary step for senior nurses. The nurses organisation is expected to ballot its members on the offer from next week. The military police are investigating sexual misconduct at Waiouru military camp and 2 senior staff members have been stood down. The Defence Force says the inquiry relates to 7 people from the Army depot, which deals with the training of recruits. It says as well as a number of offences, the investigation will cover significant shortcomings at the depot, including inappropriate conduct and a failure to follow standing orders. The Chief Ombudsman says the Auckland Council broke every rule in the book with its sloppy mishandling of an RNZ official information request. RNZ complained it took 5 months to get a council report on the imported vehicle trade at ports of Auckland. The broadcaster says internal emails between officials also raised questions about whether the council intentionally delayed the report's release. Peter Boscher says senior officials all played a part in considering the request and the delays were unacceptable. 2 far-right speakers still want to come to New Zealand despite the withdrawal of a legal challenge to the Auckland Council's ban on using its venues. The decision to ban Canadians Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux was challenged by lobby group the Free Speech Coalition, which has now withdrawn its High Court action. The event organiser David Pello says he's still trying to find a private venue to host the pair, but they'll come here anyway, even as tourists following their Australian tour. Rescuers in Laos are racing to find dozens of people feared dead and hundreds still missing since a dam collapsed in Atapu province in a remote part of the country's south. At least 6,000 homes have been swept away in the torrent of water unleashed when the dam gave way. Those are the headlines. I'm back at 6 o'clock.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina, which is about 25 minutes away. Let's turn to business news now with our new business reporter, Madison Reedy. Welcome to Checkpoint, Madison.
Thank you very much.
Abano Healthcare is tackling Australia. What does that mean for the company? What are they doing?
Well, it's doing actually pretty well. People may not know the name Abano Healthcare Group, but they may know the name Lumino the Dentists. That's their brand that they operate here in New Zealand. They also have a brand in Australia across the ditch called Maven Dental Group, and they're doing pretty well. They released their numbers today. Net profit after tax of 1.7 million. That's up about 16% on their net profit after tax for the year end May last year. And they've gone on a bit of an acquisition rampage in Australia in the past year ended May. They bought 19 practices. Now, those weren't all in Australia, but most of them were. And since then, since May, they've bought another 3. And those 3 are actually larger than any of the 19 they bought the year prior. Yeah, and the chief executive, Richard Keys, said on the phone today to investors that they plan to exceed last year's acquisition rate, and the way they're going to measure that isn't necessarily the number that they're going to buy, but how much money they'll make them. So they're actually targeting not more acquisitions but larger practices. So they're looking for larger practices, particularly in Victoria and New South Wales, where their brand doesn't really exist. And they at the moment have an Australian market share of about 2% for that Maven Dental Group brand, which isn't much, but the dental sector there is relatively untouched. It's a lot of, in fact, thousands of privately owned practices, and they're moving in there to really corporatise it. They want to have all of these private firms all under one roof, and they want that to be their roof. And that does really speak to a trans-Tasman trend that we're seeing at the moment with a lot of large New Zealand firms, Fletcher Building being one. It's now going to start bidding on a lot of Australian infrastructure projects. It's going to go pretty hard at it. EBOS as well, which is another EBOS group, which is the NZX-listed healthcare company. They just signed a huge Australian $1 billion 3-year deal to supply pharmaceuticals to 400 Chemist Warehouse stores. Yeah, so I think we're going to start, we're starting on a trend to get some really large trans-Tasman giants moving from New Zealand to Australia. But I mean, it makes sense because there's so much money to be made over there. I mean, if you even take a small slice of Australia's market, that can be the same size as our whole market.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I had no idea that Abano was quite that ambitious for expansion. Another company has been hit with miscalculated holiday pay. Who is it and how bad's the damage? Is miscalculated a sweet euphemism there? Are we being kind to that company? What do we know about what's happened here, Madison?
Miscalculations actually are quite common. The Holiday Pay Act is notoriously difficult to navigate. There are 2 different ways that you can calculate an employee's holiday pay, 2 completely separate ways, and you have to go with the one that pays the employee more. And you know, in a large firm with lots of employees, that's tricky. And this time it hit PGG Wrightson. They are a farming equipment seller, and they also, in fact, the largest in New Zealand, and they also sell online services for farm management as well. And they put out a warning on the NZX, on the stock market today, saying that they expected to make only $20 million profit, which to you and I sounds like a lot, but last year they made $46 million in profit. So not all of that forecast loss is going to come from the miscalculation. Only 6 million is, but 6 million they have to back pay staff for miscalculating their holiday pay. So they're about, I think, the 3rd to be hit by this so far, one of the larger firms. We had Bunnings Warehouse earlier this year, 11 million, and it was trying to find all of its old employees to pay that money back to them, and it most likely still is trying to find them. Spark, it was also reported that Spark put a call out. They haven't actually formally announced how much they're expecting to pay, but they did put a call out asking employees to front up if they thought that they had missed out on any holiday pay. And earnings season is next month. So, you know, this may be the year that all of these large firms, their bottom line is really affected by miscalculations in holiday pay.
Oh, thanks, Madison. Nicely explained. What happened on the markets today?
Well, up, actually. The NZX top 50 rose 0.4%. So we were up 33 points to close at 89.34. And the NZ dollar is buying at 91.8 cents against the Australian, 67.9 US cents and 51.7 to the British pence.
Madison Reedy, our new and very welcome Auckland business reporter, joining Nona Peltier upstairs as part of the Auckland Bureau. Thanks, Madison. Really appreciate it. It's coming up to 20 minutes to 6. At least 74 people are dead after raging wildfires ripped through a small resort town near Athens. Emergency crews found one group of 26 victims, including families with children huddled together in a final embrace just 30 metres from the ocean in this town in eastern Greece. Zach Fleming has more.
A husband weeps as he learns his wife is dead. Panagiotis Dougalos was evacuating, packing up his car with his wife and 3-year-old child, when fire engulfed this street. It all happened so quickly, he says, the burn blisters on his arms and legs showing just how close he came to the blaze.
We started preparing our things to put them in the car. It was so quickly. And at the moment we were together here to start the car, everybody, I took my baby and ran towards the sea, while my wife, I didn't know what happened. I think he burned herself here.
Scorched wreckages of cars line the street, some with their doors left open. Mr. Dougalos repeatedly breaks down in tears as he desperately searches his car for anything belonging to his late wife. The flames spread until they could spread no more. Hundreds of people like Mr. Dougalos flocked to the shoreline. They now have the ocean to thank for their lives. Finnish tourist Jakob Makinen ran from his hotel to the beach, then along the beach, where he was surrounded by flames on all sides.
We were lucky to be so close to the seaside that we were able to go to the water, because on the beach, well, we wouldn't be here. It was really close and we were kind of, let's say, trapped with the fire at that position.
He spent hours in the water alongside more than 700 others, eventually rescued by the Coast Guard. At least 74 people weren't able to reach the ocean though. The youngest victim, a 6-month-old baby. Emergency crews found a group of 26, including children, dead near the top of a cliff, some locked in an embrace. The fire is now under control. Survivors have been allowed back to their homes, but they now face the realisation that everything they own is gone. An entire life lost, this pensioner says, her belongings reduced to a pile of ash.
The stove is gone, the fridge is gone, it's all gone, gone. Nothing is left, nothing is left. Look, even my dress has sparks from the fire in it, sparks that were falling and would have burned us.
With parts of Mati now resembling a war zone, Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras cut short a trip to Bosnia, rushing home to an emergency meeting about the tragedy. He's declared 3 days of national mourning. But in that time, the death toll may rise, with nearly 200 people suffering from burns. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
Home again. The National Party insists it's put up a medicinal cannabis bill to help ease the pain of suffering New Zealanders, and it's not a political stunt. National's withdrawn its support for a government bill allowing those deemed terminally ill to access medicinal cannabis. This comes after the Parliamentary Committee considering the government's medicinal cannabis legislation failed to reach agreement on its scope. Trying to get to the bottom of all of this is our political reporter, Joe Moyer.
The Parliamentary Committee was split down the middle between National and Labour MPs, creating a deadlock situation when trying to decide on recommended changes. The government still has the numbers to progress the bill once it returns to Parliament, but in the meantime the National Party has created its own bill for the members' ballot. But in order for it to see the light of day, it will have to be drawn from the ballot. Opposition leader Simon Bridges denies it is trying to split the government over its own bill.
I think the timing, in a sense, dictated itself because, this was the right time with the Select Committee. I think to anyone who says this is a game or a gimmick, look at the quality and the quantity of work that's been done here. It's massive.
National's Health spokesman Michael Woodhouse sat on the Health Select Committee that heard submissions on the government's medicinal cannabis bill and said opposition MPs weren't listened to when they debated the details of the policy.
I think it's fair to say that the government members were ambivalent about the proposals that we were putting to them for changes. Look, the Minister of Health has over 1,000 officials that he could have deployed had he been more interested in exploring the issues that we were very clear were important not only to us but to New Zealanders, and there was absolutely no energy around that.
The chairperson of the Health Select Committee, Labour's Louisa Wall, says National's decision pulls the rug out from all the people who turned up to tell their stories, including those whose family members had died.
It was an emotional process. People with motor neuron disease, muscular dystrophy. So to not have an empathy and an ability now through a piece of legislation to provide product that we know will stop that suffering and to divert everybody's attention, I do think it's a kick in the guts to all those people who came and actually shared their experiences with us.
The Health Minister David Clark says National has had every opportunity to put amendments to the government bill forward to help improve it. Instead, once the Select Committee had heard all the submissions, Nationals turned around and produced its own bill, which Dr Clark says is disappointing.
Well, it seems a shame they're playing politics with this. They've just been through a Select Committee process where they've had every opportunity to put their suggestions forward. That process closed today, and now they're making political announcements. If they really wanted to do this, the obvious thing is that they could have done that any time in the last 9 years.
The Green MP Chloe Swarbrick is annoyed the National Party is now suddenly putting up its own bill on medicinal cannabis, given it voted against her bill, which was very similar.
It's really unfortunate that the National Party has decided to table their own members' bill, it being a prescription-based one which was open to them 6 months ago with my medicinal cannabis members' bill. But we're absolutely open to working across the House, as we've always made clear, in a collaborative, transparent manner to get the best outcome for patients and their whānau.
The government's bill has been reported back to Parliament, so will be up for a second reading shortly. From Parliament, for Checkpoint, Joe Moyer.
Rescuers and government officials are rushing to southern Laos after a dam wall broke, sending floodwaters surging through at least 8 villages. The death toll is more than 20 now. Hundreds are missing and 6,000 have been made homeless. The official death figures are way below what emergency services think they are. A company involved in the building of the hydroelectric plant is blaming heavy rains for fracturing the 8-metre thick dam wall. This report from the ABC's Liam Cochrane.
A woman holding a baby cries out as she's rescued by boat, distressed and seemingly angry. Elsewhere, Laotians cling to the roofs of their houses, waiting for help as muddy water rages around them. These are the scenes in southern Laos, where a dam has burst, swamping villages downstream. Sebastian Perret is a medic with Vientiane Rescue and says urgent efforts are being made to reach a group stranded on the dam itself.
There are some people that are stuck on the dam, on the top of the dam, and they're surrounded by water. So normally the army is sending helicopters to try to rescue them.
Mr. Perret spoke to the ABC as his team travelled in convoy to the scene, bringing equipment and expertise. He says their first priority will be to assess the damage and work out how best to help.
The biggest issue, I think, for the moment is that we have not too many information. We are going there first to have an evaluation of the needs, because nobody knows exactly how many people died, how many disappeared, how many have been displaced, how many villages have been flooded. But we saw footage from a helicopter a few hours ago, and it looks really terrible.
A statement from a Thai company that owns 25% of the Sipian Sinam Noi hydro project says a retainer wall 16 metres high and 8 metres thick around the reservoir fractured due to heavy rain. That sent water gushing at least 5 kilometres and completely swamped 8 villages. A Lao official involved with the emergency response says more than 4,000 people have been evacuated from the area by the army and locals in boats. But Sebastian Perret says there's not much in the way of a permanent emergency response capacity in the country.
Let's say it's limited because we are the only professional rescue team in the whole country. So after that, they have boats, they have the army, and they have human resources. But regarding the equipment, it's kind of poor actually.
For the thousands of people left homeless, it will be a struggle to find shelter from the ongoing monsoonal rains.
It's very hard because this kind of event doesn't happen very often in Laos, and there's no official organization that can take care of this. You have the Ministry of Internal Affairs that can take care of this in a country, but here the emergency would be to find some tents to give them some shelter, because it's the rainy season and it's raining a lot in the whole country now. So protection from water first, and then food and water. That could be the first emergencies.
The landlocked communist country of Laos has been criticised for its aggressive dam building, a national strategy to become the battery of Southeast Asia. The environmental costs are often discussed, and now locals are paying the price for providing other people's electricity.
That was the ABC's Liam Cochrane. It's coming up to 10 minutes to 6. A man poisoned by the nerve agent Novichok in South England has spoken for the first time since the incident which killed his girlfriend. Charlie Rowley was released from hospital in Salisbury last week. His girlfriend Dawn Sturgis died earlier this month. The pair was poisoned 4 months after an attack on the former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia. The ABC's Thomas Oreti has this report.
Charlie Rowley says he remembers the moment he gave some perfume to his girlfriend as a gift.
It was 3 by 3 inch box, ½ inch thick, which contained a glass bottle, so you had to remove the bottle from the cellophane wrapper, put the pump dispenser on the bottle, and it poured. I ended up tipping some of my hands.
In his first interview since the incident in June, he's told the British network ITV he washed the substance off straight away. But Dawn Sturgis didn't.
I do have a memory of her spraying on her wrist and I guess rubbing them together. I think within 15 minutes, I believe Dawn said she felt that she had a headache. She asked me if I had any headache tablets. I went into the bathroom and found her in the bath, fully clothed, led in the bath, in a very ill state.
The 44-year-old never regained consciousness. She died 8 days later, and Charlie Rowley was left in a critical condition.
I think it's very irresponsible for people to leave the poison, for anybody to pick up. It could have been children or anything. It was just so unfortunate. Just very angry.
He described it as an oily substance with little odour, and it took some time before investigators revealed it was a Soviet-era nerve agent, the same one used to poison former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter in nearby Salisbury back in March.
When I came round weeks after, and the police were talking to me, and they mentioned a bottle they found in the flat. They run tests on it, and I could pretty much guarantee that the contents in the bottle was perfume, and it was nothing to worry about. They were on tests on it, and I was in complete shock when they told me it was Novichok.
There are still questions to be answered. Charlie Rowley says he found the perfume but can't remember where. He is, however, certain that it wasn't in the Salisbury Park where he'd been the day before. And as the investigations continue, his home remains a crime scene.
It's locked down until decontamination. The truth is, I wouldn't like to go back.
And he's paid tribute to Dawn Sturgis.
Dawn was a lovely lady. She had a big heart. She'd help anyone.
Charlie Rowley ending that report from the ABC's Thomas Oreti. New Zealand sailors Peter Burling and Blair Tuke have confirmed they'll attempt to defend their 49er title at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. The pair also announced they'll be part of Team New Zealand's defence of the America's Cup in 2021, which makes them what we already knew they were, really pretty remarkable. Two big contests and very different events, a year apart. Blair Tuke told Matt Chatterton it's going to be hard slog.
Yeah, there's that qualification ahead of us, and just making sure we're in the best shape we can be. So there's plenty of hard work in front of us before, even getting to the Olympics. So that's what we're looking forward to getting stuck back into, really. It's been a while now since, we've even sailed the 49er, since Rio pretty much. So, looking forward to getting back into it. And, at the same time, we've got a lot of commitment down at Team New Zealand as well, which we got to get stuck into.
How many events will you have to commit to with the 49er over the next 12-month period? Are you going to have to sort of primarily shift your focus from America's Cup and the bigger boats to 49er, or will it be a case of juggling? Like, what's the breakdown of the next 12 months?
No, we'll definitely be doing both at the same time. There's obviously key events in the 49er that we have to compete in. Obviously, we have to qualify for the Olympics, so there'll be events that we have to do for that, and there'll be other events that we do as part of the build-up. But also on top of that, there's all the stuff that you do behind the scenes. The boat work, the preparation on that area on the equipment front, the testing of equipment, and then all the training. So you can't cheat that sort of stuff, and that's what we really want to make sure we had the time to do, all the hard yards, outside of the events as well.
It sounds like you're going to be pretty busy over the next, I guess now probably the next 4 years really, or 3 or 4 years in the lead up to all this. Is there any risk at all of, one event being sacrificed over the other, or is it just an even playing field between both events?
No, that's why we've taken a good amount of time to decide and lay out the plans over the next couple of years. I think, there is always that risk that you try and do too many things and you do none of them well. So, I think we're pretty fortunate that we've had the experience to run dual campaigns before, and obviously the landscape's slightly different this time with it being a shorter build up to the Olympics, and also our roles at Team New Zealand different and different stages in our career, but we're confident that we can put in the amount of time and effort needed to do well in both campaigns.
Blair Tuke, already of course an America's Cup winner and Olympic gold medalist, talking to Matt Chatterton. Exactly 24 hours after their female counterparts had done the same thing, the New Zealand men's sevens team arrived home this morning as back-to-back world champs. Understandably, they were a little weary after a sometimes bumpy 12.5-hour flight from San Fran, but it certainly didn't dull the satisfaction of stepping onto home soil with more gold draped around their necks. Sports reporter Clay Wilson was there as a proud smattering of family and friends braved a chilly morning in Auckland to welcome home the world champs.
Full time, New Zealand 33, England 12. New Zealand are the Sevens Rugby World Cup champions.
They were just the words the New Zealand men's sevens team were hoping to hear at the end of their season. The perfect conclusion to a golden 2018, just 3 months after they had also topped the heap at the Commonwealth Games. And although it was starting to hit home as they touched down back on Kiwi soil, co-captain Scott Curry admitted the magnitude of what they had achieved this year was yet to fully dawn on the players.
Yeah, I think it's going to take quite a while, to be honest, to actually truly sink in. Not only what we've just done, but what we've done this year. To be able to win Commonwealth Games and then back it up and win a Sevens World Cup is something pretty special, yeah.
That didn't mean the team weren't filled with an incredible sense of satisfaction. In fact, that was something which arrived very shortly after the final whistle blew to confirm their win over England in the title-deciding contest in San Francisco.
A lot of the time you always just, especially when we're away, it's like, what have we got to do next? Well, we've got something, we've got a meeting, we've got to get to this place, we've got to warm up, there's always something next. But after we finished that final, it's sort of like, wow, there's nothing for us to do. It was real cool just to be sitting in that change room and talking and laughing and singing and enjoying each other's company.
That special kind of camaraderie Curry describes comes with hours upon hours these players spend training, travelling and playing together all around the world. And New Zealand coach Clark Laidlaw had no doubt it had been a crucial component in their success.
We spend 150 days away or whatever it is from your family and friends, and if you're going to do that, then you need to enjoy your job and you need to have fun as a group. We spend a lot of time with the group, making sure we're enjoying each other's company. So that's good, it keeps us nice and relaxed, and I think it really helps us on the weekends when you've got to be up for a huge game against Fiji, then relax and come back and play England.
Laidlaw also revealed that the New Zealand women's team had played a role in his team's triumph. The two squads are both based in Mount Maunganui, and the coach of the men's side said seeing their female counterparts lift the title just a day prior had spurred his players on.
Quite unique in that regards for rugby. The two teams train the same facilities, we share meeting rooms, we have lunch together. So watching them play as well as I did obviously inspires the boys to try and play really well. Yeah, we love watching them play. They've done an awesome job the whole year.
For both New Zealand teams, a well-deserved break awaits. But it won't be long before planning begins for both next year's World Series and further on to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. And when he returns to work in September, Laidlaw will do so content in the knowledge that the blueprint for success has been firmly established.
I suppose our challenge now is retaining our talent and then adding to it to make us stronger, so our depth's stronger. Tokyo's 2 years away, but there's no more pinnacle events between now and then, so it's given us real confidence that we can win a big tournament or win a pinnacle event.
Commonwealth Games gold medals tucked away and a pair of World Cup trophies in the cabinet. New Zealand Sevens is certainly sitting pretty. Moti hotaka o te ahipo nei, ko Clay Wilson aho.
Keith Quinn, wonderful Keith Quinn, was saying on Twitter the other day that the rugby world is getting a bit sick of this, but the women's 15s, the men's 15s, the women's sevens and the men's sevens are all world champs, which is pretty remarkable. We're getting a lot of feedback tonight, and some of your feedback is just fantastic. I mean, it's all fantastic. Even the feedback says, John Campbell, you're an idiot. It's at the very least heartfelt. But some of it's just reading Andrew. You're Andrew T. I'm not going to use your surname because I don't want to embarrass you, but yours isn't feedback, bro. It's a PhD thesis on the access of the rights and wrongs of access to private land for the public. We really appreciate it. And your recommendation to call Anne at the University of Canterbury, we'll do that. Thank you all. It's 6 o'clock.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, good evening. Ko Katrina Batten aho. Extra funding for the latest revised pay offer to nurses will need to come from the Health Ministry. A spokesperson for the District Health Boards, Jim Green, says it provides detailed assurances to nurses over better staffing and the earlier introduction of a new top salary step for senior nurses. Mr Green told Checkpoint there's no extra government money in the offer, but the salary step aspect will be discussed with the ministry.
The government's made it really clear that there is no more money from them in terms of supporting this, and so we're going to be talking with the Ministry of Health about how we can work this through. But to us, it was really important to move forward on that. We're keen to get moving, and so are NZNO and its members.
Jim Green. The union says the latest offer has teeth to it and is recommending its members vote to accept it. The Industrial Services Manager for the Nurses Organisation, Glenda Alexander, told Checkpoint the offer will deal more quickly with the nursing shortage.
What we believe is the real improvements in this latest offer is the issues around having clearer monitoring and reporting mechanisms, also ensuring that there will be real enforceable mechanisms now to make sure that we can get those nurses in to the hospitals where they need to be.
Glenda Alexander of the Nurses Union. The Army Chief, Peter Kelly, says allegations of sexual misconduct at Waiouru military camp are incredibly disappointing. 9 staff at the camp have been stood down from their duties as the military police investigate. Major General Kelly says the allegations were brought to his attention on June the 27th and the investigation was launched 2 days ago.
What we uncovered, there were 7 incidents that make up the allegations. And so that's why 7 individuals are being investigated. In one case, yes, a recruit did come forward and make an allegation.
Peter Kelly says the Defence Force has worked very hard to address issues around sexual harassment and bullying, and it's taking this matter very seriously. The National Party says having to restart the process of appointing a new principal family court judge is unusual. The Attorney-General, David Parker, has told a parliamentary committee he restarted the recruitment process in order to consider additional attributes. The current judge, Lawrence Ryan, is due to retire in 3 weeks. National's Chris Finlayson, who spent 9 years as Attorney-General, says restarting the process is a little odd. He says typically nominations are called for and a shortlist is drawn up.
After the shortlist is drawn up, there will be a number of people who will be appointed to a panel who will interview the person, and then a recommendation comes to the Attorney-General. It would be a very bold Attorney-General in my experience if you had judges interviewing and say this person, by virtue of his or her judicial experience and so on, is the right person for the job, to say, oh, I want someone else.
The Shadow Attorney-General, Chris Finlayson. Pakistanis have begun voting in a knife-edge general election, pitting the former cricket star Imran Khan against the party of the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Mr Sharif was sentenced to prison on corruption charges this month. Mr Khan's PTI party has emerged as a slight favourite in the national polls, but the divisive race is likely to come down to Punjab, the country's most populous province, where Mr Sharif's party has clung to its lead in recent surveys. About 106 million people are registered to vote in polls due to close early tomorrow New Zealand time, and the likely winner should be known later tomorrow morning. The Human Rights Commission says there have already been blatant attempts to manipulate the polls. The US President's daughter, Ivanka Trump, is closing down her fashion label, saying she's become frustrated by restrictions placed on the company since her father moved into the White House. The continued existence of the business has sparked allegations of conflict of interest. Here's our US correspondent, Simon Marks.
Ivanka Trump was a household name long before her dad moved into the Oval Office, but now she's closing the women's clothing and accessories company that bears her own name. She says she needs to focus instead on her role as a senior advisor to the president. In reality, she's been dogged by conflict of interest allegations as the company has expanded globally, and by flagging sales in the US, where the Trump name turns off as many shoppers as it attracts.
Simon Marks in Washington. It's 6:04. To sport, British boxer Dillian Whyte says he's more than capable of handling whatever former WBO heavyweight champion Joseph Parker throws at him in their upcoming bout. The two will square off at the O2 Arena in London this Sunday in Parker's first fight since his loss to Anthony Joshua in March. Whyte, who's coming off a knockout win over Australian Lucas Brown earlier this year, believes Parker is a skilled boxer but rates himself as a serious threat.
He's got like 3 times the amount of experience I've got. He's a good boxer, tough, got speed, good boxing skills. So it'd be very interesting to see, you know what I mean? But I know what I can do, I know what I'm capable of. I know how I train, so whatever he brings, you know, it's up to me to break it down and do what I got to do, you know?
Dillian Whyte. The Wellington Phoenix have signed Polish midfielder Michał Kopczynski on a season-long loan deal. The 26-year-old is contracted to Polish team Legia Warsaw, whom he helped qualify for the Champions League in 2016-17. He appeared in more than 30 games that season, including 11 European games, facing off against the likes of Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund and Sporting Lisbon. The Silver Fern shooter Maria Folau has been confirmed to play for the Northern Mystics in the ANZ Premiership when they host the Waikato Bay of Plenty Magic later tonight. In the second to last round of the regular season, the Auckland-based side currently sit in 4th position. If they win tonight, they could draw level with or even surpass the Tactics for 3rd and give themselves a chance to make the finals. That's the news. A dam breaks.
The 2 million Olympic-sized swimming pools that suddenly rushed down the river after this dam broke.
No fire break.
A massive wave of flame just gutted, engulfed the whole town of Mati. I mean, the drone images show that it looked like it's been hit by an atomic bomb.
And a malaria breakthrough.
The current treatment is around 2 weeks and very few patients can complete the course, which means they don't get the cure. So this is a big breakthrough.
Breaking news, Morning Report with Guy Espiner and Philippa Tolley, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, the country's first register of health and safety professionals is about to go live. Will it help make our work lives safer, and what else still needs to be done? And after 10, Australian director Benjamin Gilmore on his sobering war film Shot in Dangerous Conditions on location in Afghanistan. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland to Whanganui, also Coromandel Peninsula and the Central High Country, cloudy periods and a few showers, retreating to the coast later tomorrow. Bay of Plenty, Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, often fine, but a few showers overnight, tonight and tomorrow afternoon. Manawatu to Wellington, also Wairarapa, Marlborough and Nelson. A few showers from Kapiti to Manawatu, spreading elsewhere tonight, then clearing everywhere by midday tomorrow and becoming fine. Bulla to Fiordland, showers some heavy with possible thunderstorms in Fiordland tonight and again tomorrow evening. Canterbury, fine apart from high cloud overnight. Otago, fine apart from scattered light rain tomorrow morning. Southland, scattered rain from tonight until tomorrow morning, then showers mainly about the coast and Stewart Island. And the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods, a few showers from tonight. It's 8 minutes past 6 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina, and thank you everyone for being with us. We've got some breaking news. Green MP Jan Logie, you didn't have this in the news, did you? It's just happened. No, it just happened. Jan Logie's Domestic Violence Victims Protection Bill has been passed into law at Parliament this evening. The bill gives domestic violence victims up to 10 days leave off work to deal with the consequences of violence at home. CTU immediately congratulated her. Her colleague Gareth Hughes acknowledged her persistence in getting the bill into law. Gareth Hughes tweeted he was very proud of his colleague for the world-leading bill. We're just making some calls to try and get Jan Logie on the program before 6:30. Jan, if you're listening, although I doubt it, you'll be standing in smiling somewhere, but do give us a call. We think we'll get her on before 6:30. Let's go back to the story we led with an hour ago, though. The nurses organisation is recommending its members accept the revised offer from DHBs, which it says addresses issues over staff, safety, and safe staffing for patients too, of course, and equity. The new offer comes after thousands of nurses went on strike earlier this month for the first time in 30 years. And while the offer doesn't include any extra money, it does fast-track one of the salary steps for registered nurses and midwives and offers a commitment to increasing staffing levels urgently. That's not more money or more staff, it's just the same extra staff that had been promised faster. Here's Zach Fleming.
No extra money and no extra staff, but the Nurses Union's given up its fight, telling its members to accept the District Health Board's revised new pay and staffing offer.
This is the fifth offer now, and we have retained all the previous benefits. So, as we've gone along, there's been, things put in and improvements made, and we've kept all that together on the table. We've also now got the new step inside the term of the agreement, which was another concern that members had with the last offer.
The STEP, Nurses Organisation Associate Industrial Services Manager Glenda Alexander is referring to, is an offer of bringing the top nurse and midwife salary stage forward to May 2020. The other addition in this new offer is around staffing concerns. Again, no extra staff, but the Nurses Union has secured
clearer monitoring and reporting mechanisms, also ensuring that there will be real enforceable mechanisms now to make sure that we can get those nurses in to the hospitals where they need to be, and to make sure that everyone has a much better environment in order for them to do what they do best, which is to ensure that patients get quality care. So I think there's real positives in this. I think it is about saying now we've got some teeth to it, and that there is real opportunities for us to see improvements in that arena.
The DHBs are talking up their offer. Spokesperson Jim Green says it gives nurses what they want and will improve staffing, despite numbers staying static.
Those new staff are going to get there into the wards and make a difference. And they wanted to have really regular and concise and clear reporting to their members in the hospitals that what was happening, where are the vacancies, how are they being filled, that sort of information. They wanted that really up front. And so we've added that in, some really strong words around that so that people will know where they're at.
The government was explicit, telling nurses it wouldn't be offering any more money, whether that was for higher salaries or extra staff. So the two concessions from DHBs today are potentially as good as it will get. Maybe not good enough, though. Nurses Checkpoint spoke to late this afternoon still aren't impressed.
Safe staffing is a really big issue that needs to be addressed now, and it can't wait until a later date, and 500 nurses is not going to cut the mustard. And I think that fair pay needs to be looked at now also.
I believe that there probably is no more funding. I don't think there is any more money in the pot for us. I don't want to agree to it because I don't believe that they've adequately addressed the safe staffing, which is 90% of the problem sometimes too. So I honestly couldn't tell you at the moment which way I'm going to vote.
But with no more money available, Mr Green made a plea to nurses to accept the offer.
So I hope now that nurses will be able to see the progress, get all of the details from their union and support us now in moving forward.
In other words, please don't go on strike again. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
30 minutes past 6, the Chief of Army, Peter Kelly, says he's extremely disappointed to be investigating 7 instructors at the Army depot in Waiuru with alleged incidents dating back to May last year. Major General Kelly says allegations came to his attention late last month and an investigation was started during the course of that inquiry. He says a male recruit came forward saying he'd been subject to bullying, harassment and sexual assault. He told our political editor, Jane Patterson, he's treating the situation with the utmost seriousness.
This is incredibly disappointing. We've worked really hard over the last few years to address issues around sexual harassment, around bullying and the likes. And we take this matter seriously. Once it was brought to our attention, we had to conduct an initial investigation because it was all anecdote and innuendo. That took 2 weeks to unfold, and we got the findings of that last week. And then we had to act, and by acting we had to remove the senior commanders of that unit for what I and others consider to be a failure of command, and the 7 individuals have been removed pending investigations by the military police into the nature of the allegations against each of those individuals.
So a large number of instructors in this training unit involved, or at least implicated at this stage?
That's right. So there are 4 allegations against 4 instructors.
Is there any suggestion that these have happened with common knowledge of people? Are these all separate relationships or incidents? Are they all related?
No, they are separate incidents, but the ongoing allegations will determine if they are related in any way.
So there has been some commentary about rumours about the Army depot and attitudes of instructors towards some recruits and in terms of sexual relationships. What do you have to say about that?
Look, and we take those allegations and those rumours incredibly seriously. There is no place in the New Zealand Army, in the New Zealand Defence Force, in the Army depot for this type of behaviour. And we have been very clear on that over the last few years. And we as a Defence Force, we as an Army, have been working really hard on this. What is really disappointing is making it explicitly clear to the NCOs who are posted there, to the officers who are posted there, and to the recruits who are there, what the boundaries are in terms of relationships between recruits and instructors cannot be made any clearer than what we currently make it. And so that when individuals act in behaviours that are not appropriate and totally against the values of the New Zealand Army, we will act. And when it's brought to our attention, and we have done, and we have removed 7 instructors, and we have removed the commanders.
What time frame do these allegations span?
The allegations span from May 2017 to May this year.
The Defence Minister said this afternoon he only found out about it today when this story hit the media. Is that good enough?
No, it's not good enough, and I absolutely take full responsibility. I should have kept the Minister informed and made him aware of this, and he is absolutely right.
Was it an oversight that he wasn't informed or his office wasn't informed?
Look, all I will say, it is not good enough. And I certainly, I met with the Minister this afternoon, and he made his point loud and clear. And it is simply not good enough.
What happens now in terms of that investigation?
So right now, the military police are dealing with the separate allegations, and as they progress, they will determine whether charges will be laid under the Armed Forces Discipline Act. It's most likely that most of these offences will be dealt with under the military justice system because they probably won't meet the threshold required through other authorities.
But there would be the potential to bring the police in if there was a clearly criminal matter?
Yes, absolutely.
What threshold, or how do you decide that in terms of whether to use the military disciplinary regime and military police as opposed to bringing the police into it?
It's in relation to the nature of the offence and whether it meets the thresholds of the Crimes Act.
So have you contacted the police flagging this with them at the moment?
No, not at this point in time. At this point in time, we are dealing purely with the military police investigation. If the investigation determines that it should be brought to the attention of other authorities, then we will do.
That's Major General Peter Kelly speaking to our political editor, Jane Patterson. We said we'd try and do this, and we've done it. Returning now to Green Party MP Jan Logie and her Domestic Violence Victims Protection Bill, which has been passed into law tonight. Just happened by a vote of 63 to 57. I think the bill gives domestic violence victims up to 10 days leave off work to deal with the consequences of violence at home. Jan Logie, I think, is on the line. Are you there, Jan?
I am. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm a little bit excited. It's been about 7 years coming, and the work of, probably might be around thousands of amazing women and unions and businesses all coming together to get this change. So it's a world first, and it's pretty amazing.
Yes, and you referred to business, and I know you said this bill is a win for victims, a win for business, and ultimately a win for us all. We can absolutely understand how it is a win for victims, but can you explain how it is a win for business and the kind of support you have had from business because of that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, because people have been saying this will be a cost to business, and actually what we know is that this is a support for business to reduce the cost of domestic violence on their workplaces. Because the thing is, domestic violence doesn't just happen in the home, it reaches into our workplaces, and that is happening right now. And too many businesses just don't know how to respond. They either don't see it and they lose great staff, or they just lose the productivity because everyone else in the workplace is kind of spending all this time trying to work out how do they keep us safe, and not having the support to know how to do that. So this provides employers a framework.
Yes, I'm just looking at the coverage in the New Zealand Herald. They're quoting Women's Refuge, who found that 60% of New Zealand women who'd been in a violent relationship were in full-time work before the relationship, but fewer than half managed to stay in it. That's a striking loss, isn't it?
It really is. And we've had, over 2 million workers in Australia are covered by these types of protections, and the businesses have been increasingly getting behind it because they see the benefit to their staff members who they care about, or those victims, and their workplaces.
So they're covered through collective contracts, I presume, but this is world first legislation. So in short, what does the legislation give victims of domestic violence?
So from April next year, they will be entitled to up to 10 days leave a year to be able to deal with the impacts of violence. So if that's about, going and finding a new house, just being at home if their kids are feeling traumatised, or if their partners are still with them and are preventing them from getting to work, it helps them keep their job and an income to be safe and to escape. It also provides a framework for flexible working arrangements so that they can maybe not have their details on the website so they can't be tracked by their partner, or to be able to work different hours so they're not a sitting duck if they leave. And it makes sure that we make a change to the Human Rights Act so that employers can't discriminate against people for being a victim of domestic violence.
Just passed by 63 votes to 57 in the House. So that is now law. Jan Logie, Green MP, whose bill it is. Congratulations. And thank you so much for joining us at short notice. And we're sure that you're off to have a celebratory something or other. Jan Logie joining us now live, with the news that has been passed into law. It is world first legislation as far as we are aware. It's coming up to 22 minutes past 6. Greece is observing 3 days of national mourning after at least 74 people died when wildfires tore through a resort town, trapping people in cars and on cliffs. Now it appears at least some of the fires near the capital of Athens may have been deliberately lit. Obviously, this is a terrible crime. More than 200 people have been injured. The Greek Prime Minister is describing it as an unspeakable tragedy and is appealing for international help. The bodies of one group of victims, including children, were found huddled together in a village northeast of Athens, as the BBC's James Reynolds reports.
The flames came here to Mati so quickly that there was almost no time for anyone to react. In seconds, families had to decide whether to stay inside or make a dash for the sea just a few dozen metres away. Konstantinos Medafliades told me that he made a run for it with his wife and family. When it came, did you think this might be it for your life? That this might be the end of your life?
Yes, I had this feeling, and believe me, I had the feeling that I can do almost nothing, just run. Because, it starts to get dark. I put my lights, but I couldn't.
So the whole sky was dark?
Dark, yes.
With
dark.
smoke?
With smoke.
Did you start choking?
Yes, from the very beginning. And then we were taking sea water and putting on our head because there were flames everywhere, even close to the sea.
48-year-old Haris collected his 3 dogs and ran from his house. He told me what he saw.
Fire, the atmosphere was very heavy, very hot. There were explosions from the cars.
They were all burned out on this street, right outside your house.
It was a macabre, very occur and very bizarre traffic of burned cars.
Those cars, all entirely burned, now line the street next to pools of metal which melted in the flames. Some here were not able to escape. The bodies of around 20 people were found in a yard. Vasilis Andriopoulos, a Red Cross rescue worker who visited the area, described what he'd seen.
It seems some of them knew each other. We found them in small groups. They could have been friends or family who tried to protect themselves by hugging each other.
And that area is still cordoned off. From a distance, we could see officers still working to identify everything they found.
That's James Reynolds in Mati, northeast of Athens. Two far-right speakers who've been banned from speaking at Auckland Council venues still plan to come to New Zealand. This is despite an advocacy group today withdrawing its High Court challenge to the Council's decision. Matthew Tunison reports.
The Free Speech Coalition crowdfunded more than $80,000 to take Auckland Council to court over its decision to ban controversial speakers Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux from its venues. After spending most of the money on legal fees, the group today backed out of the court action. Mayor Phil Goff says the group never had a leg to stand on.
Well, it was never about free speech, was it? They always had the right to come to New Zealand. The question was, did they have the right to demand to use a venue paid for by all Aucklanders, including the people that they intended to abuse, insult and provoke?
Despite withdrawing the case, the Free Speech Coalition is still claiming victory. Group spokesman David Cuman says the case revealed the decision to ban the pair was made by Regional Facilities Auckland and not Mr Goff, as had previously appeared to have been the case.
We were able to establish that Mayor Goff actually did not have the authority or the power to decide who can and can't speak in council venues. And so, essentially, we won.
Mr Cuman says the Free Speech Coalition still intends to pursue Auckland Council in court on different legal grounds at a later date. David Pello of events company Axiomatic, which is organising the controversial speaking rally, says he is still trying to find a private venue to host Southern and Molyneux.
They'll be heading there for at least a holiday after the Australian tour, if not more work.
The Speaker's Tour of Australia has been dogged by protests, including violent clashes between police and activists outside a Melbourne event on Friday. For Checkpoint, call Matthew Tunison, Tene.
26 and a half minutes past 6, almost the end of Checkpoint for tonight. Just before we go, the singer-songwriter Demi Lovato, perhaps better known to some of you as a former judge on X Factor, is awake and with her family after being admitted to hospital in LA with a suspected drug overdose. 25-year-old, gosh, is she still that young, has been open about her struggles with substance abuse over the years. The BBC's Jane Francis Kelly reports.
Demi Lovato was in the midst of a US tour when she was reportedly taken to hospital after being found unconscious at her home, according to US media reports. It's thought she was given emergency medicine for an overdose at the scene. The Sorry Not Sorry singer is awake and believed to be in a stable condition. The former child star has spoken very openly about her previous abuse of drugs and alcohol, but there were concerns she had relapsed in recent weeks. Only last month she released a song called Sober, in which she sings about her struggles.
Mama, I'm so sorry, I'm not sober anymore. And Daddy, please forgive me for the drinks.
Fans and celebrities have been offering messages of support on social media, including Ariana Grande and Lily Allen. Talk show host Ellen DeGeneres tweeted, "I love Demi Lovato so much. It breaks my heart that she's going through this. She's a light in this world and I am sending my love to her and her family." Despite the singer's problems, she is one of the world's biggest selling artists and has been widely praised for trying to raise awareness for those suffering from mental illness. Her family have released a statement thanking everyone for their love, prayers and support.
Wasn't my intention. I'm sorry to myself.
That's the BBC's Jane Francis Kelly reporting. Boy, a lot of feedback in tonight. This from Lydia, who says that she has had access to the Hunter Valley station under Penny and Taff over the years. And Lydia says the valley is utterly extraordinary. Some of our most stunning, serious peaks, fabulous tramping and fishing too. I've only ever driven in once, and after 4 hours of full four-wheel driving, we were still not even level with the major and glaciated peaks. It's huge and it's very valuable to New Zealanders. We as a nation should have bought it from Penny and Taff. But that's done now, the best we manage it. Nice point, Lydia. But Lydia's saying she did get access under Penny and Taff. This from Dermot, who's saying this isn't a story about the rights and wrongs of Matt Lauer, it's a story about trust. Dermot says, we all agree that Matt Lauer purchased the property in a totally legal and transparent manner. He trusted our legal system, as he rightly should, but now that trust is being eroded. I felt the oil and gas exploration ban has similar themes. Charter schools also. On the flip side, I wonder if teachers are also feeling a lack of trust in our government. Simply put, John, trust is the entirety of what modern society is built upon. If organisations, communities, businesses, individuals, trade unions, NGOs, you name it, cannot have trust in the government, economy or environment they live in, then we are on a very slippery slope. And Matt Lauer, according to Dermot, bought the station in good faith. He satisfied the requirements to buy the station, and now the ground is changing beneath him. Really polarised feedback on this, but we appreciate it all. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. A spokesperson says today's offer from the district health boards gives nurses detailed assurances over better staffing and will fast-track a new top salary step. Jim Green has told Checkpoint there's no more government money, but extra funding for the salary step will be discussed with the Health Ministry. And Nurses Organisation spokesperson Glenda Alexander says the revised offer will deal more quickly with the nursing shortage. A pathologist who examined a woman found in a submerged vehicle 10 months after she disappeared says decomposition meant he could not determine the cause of death. Corey Jeffries is on trial in the High Court in Hamilton for the murder of Kim Richmond, whose body was discovered in Lake Arapuni in June 2017. The pathologist Rexon C says a post-mortem found no detectable sign of violence, but death may have been caused by head injury or neck